talking today about noise reduction live. We've got myself, I'm on the East Coast of the US from the fine state of Delaware, making me convenient to New York, Philadelphia, DC, somewhere else, I'm sure. We got Diego from Bogota.
Hey,
what's the temperature like right now? What is it?
Here is in Celsius. It's like 20 Celsius right now.
20 Celsius, okay.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Blake in Munich? Blake?
Yeah, it's about 18 degrees Celsius here. Kind of thunderstorms tonight. Yeah.
Paco in Madrid. It's good to see you, Paco.
Good to see you too, guys. It's 22 degrees here. It's summer ending here. So.
We've got Mr. Kevin Shaw in London. What's the temperature like in London today? It's muted. It's muted with a chance of thunder.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's about 15 degrees outside, but we're expecting a lot of rain tomorrow. So we were all outside in the garden today.
And Mr. Eagles.
Well,
what is it there?
It's 5 a.m., so it's chilly, but we're expected 25 degrees tomorrow.
I see.
The Wednesday tomorrow for me, so it's pretty warm. We're coming into spring.
Yeah, I got up this morning, gentlemen, and had to take kids to school. It was 13 degrees up this morning. 13. It's gone all the way up to 21. Oh. Yes, but it's gorgeous out today. Thanks everybody for joining us. We've got people in Stockholm, in Sweden, Brazil, and Peru, watching from exotic North New Jersey. Hey, Vern, I've been there. I've been there a little too much in my life. Secaucus and the like. Thanks for joining us. We're going to be talking today about noise reduction. We're going to be talking live. We're going to give each of our esteemed speakers some time today. The whole idea of this, I think, was proposed. Was it Warren? Was it you who proposed this idea?
I think it was you. I think when we had our monthly meeting.
Oh God, was it me?
Yeah, we can blame you, Jeff, for this crazy idea.
I get blamed for so much in life. It's a joy. Yeah, was just this idea that each of us has our favorite set of tools, and we all have the same similar generalized problem, which is noise reduction is a pain in the butt. You know, when it's shot right, it's never an issue, but I just curious, has anybody ever gotten footage that was all shot right that needed no help at all? Boy, that's a long pregnant pause.
Never happened. All this auto grading,
noise reduction.
No, it's not. Gotta have a color.
Come on.
There's definitely a joy in saving a shot that was a little questionable, or one that hangs an entire scene or entire piece. There's definitely a joy when it works, and when it doesn't, you at least go, hey, it's the best that could be done in theory. And we were having a discussion where we all said, oh, well, have you tried this? And that's where we got to this particular webinar. For those of you watching, we want to make sure, hold on one second. We want to make sure you see here. I want to make sure this comes up right. There it goes. We are giving away a 12-month license from Filmworkz they kindly donated this. Does anybody know what that's worth?
About $700, I think.
Yeah. $700, nice. What is digital noise, and do we have to fix it? And what are our options, and what do they cost? And that's kind of the genesis of this whole webinar this time. Anybody have any wide thoughts?
The reason for the slide is basically that slide came from a shoot that I did. So anyone's been in my classes will have seen that. And it's about 75 frames. So that's the reason why you can see a little bit of noise in that. That was red camera originally. And because it's high speed, just sort of means that those pixels or photon sites they're fighting a little bit more for the exposure, even though it's quite bright outside. And that's basically what your noise is. It's normally when things do not have enough light. So they don't have enough light to open them up. So they're sort of, if you like, complaining, they're doing this. And then you've got different ISO values for each site, and that becomes your noise. So you don't always see it, but it's likely to be in low light areas. Now, this is the clip where all the guys are going to be using. It's a clip that is now ProRes 422HQ. It's been graded, so we want to do some comparisons with it. There won't be any color correction involved. Now, obviously, you've got different types of noise, and some people say, well, there's nice noise. That's good noise. And now you get that from the better cameras where you can just see a little bit in there. Maybe it reminds us of film grain, and that's a sort of, again, well, we don't mind that. Now, I find I'm not trying to remove every single thing. Some of it I quite like in there, especially as sometimes we're adding grain into things. The noise that sometimes is the more problem is the fixed pattern noise, which you get off like lesser cameras, which is almost like a net has been plonked on there. And as you grade the picture harder, you see it like in a grid pattern. So this is not with this. Jeff?
Do you have a camera that you just cringe if somebody says to you, hey, we shot on the C300 or the C100 Mark II? Warren, do you have one that you just go, oh yeah, that's one I'm just going to end up dealing with a ton of noise?
It was a C100, but it wasn't particularly the noise. Wasn't so bad. It was the 8-bit banding that killed me there for a few years in that camera. But any camera, if you're out at night and people say, and the producer thinks, I'm using this fantastic new camera, we don't need any lights. It's amazing. Well, it's not true. We know we do need lights, and people are improved by lighting them, and however you light them is always going to make it better. But, hey, that gives us some work, doesn't it, fixing these things?
It does keep us all employed.
It's not just I think we should think of the creative aspects as well. So I'll often use noise reduction just on a skin key or something like that, just to kind of clean up the skin. In a lot of commercials, even some of the features that goes down pretty well with clients.
Do any of you guys target particular ranges when it comes to noise? I find myself where my biggest battles are almost always, is in shadow material, shadow area where the photo sites just didn't do a very good job.
Yeah. But one of the problems is that in most of the cases, in my case, I don't have time. That's the problem. I mean, you have to finish it. You have to finish so fast that at the end you copy a preset to everything. And if you have time, you check it. But I mean, if you are working for TV and so on, it's sometimes difficult to check again.
Yeah, I find it a lot with dark material when I'm trying to push it, and then all of a sudden noise comes up, and then I have to do something about it there.
It's Mystica you're using, Paco? Do I have that right?
Yeah, we're going to use first the Mystica Denoise tool. Okay, so we could see what is the native tool in Mystica. I have here my timeline with a clip that Warren and Jeff were talking about. And I'm just going to apply the Mystica Denoise node. And over here, what we are going to be able to see is first how the denoise tool works in Mystica. And actually, we could see the basics of how denoise tools that use motion estimation work, okay? So if we go here to the values that you could see here in the parameters, we have the parameters scope, mode, and spatial. And the important one, the one we're going to focus on here today is obviously that we are going to denoise our footage with some temporal denoise. And what is important about that is that we need to define a scope that we want to analyze. So basically what's going on is that the denoise tool is analyzing the neighboring frames, checking the noise patterns and everything to detect what is noise and what is actually a real feature from the image. And depending on how strong the noise is, you need to choose different type of scope. So from 3 frames to 5 frames to 7 frames. Okay, so even now, if I zoom in just a bit, just by applying the denoise tool, we could see that it's done a little bit of its job. But with temporal denoise, we do have some of those artifacts that are snaring and tearing of the image. So we're going to look into how we can take care of that in Mystica. The cool thing here in Mystica is that in the denoise tool, okay, right now, I can go into the alpha mode, and in the alpha mode, we could see this pattern. This pattern is where we are seeing where the denoise tool is analyzing the pixels in the image, and every single white part of that image is actually a part of the image that is prone of having artifacts. And you could see here that as soon as I increase the amount of frames that we are analyzing, okay, that white section is larger, okay? Meaning that obviously there'll be a lot more frames. I'm gonna leave it at 5 because for this, I think it would be enough. And I'm gonna go back again to the RGB image. We could see here, if I turn it off for 1 second, you can see the highlights on the glasses here. This is the noisy picture right now. But if I disactivate the bypass, we can see that that smearing, because of the motion estimation, we get some of that tearing and smearing of the image. So what we're going to do in Mystica is remove that by combining temporal and spatial denoise. And how we can do that? Well, we're going to go through the alpha channel and basically start decreasing the areas that are going to be affected by the spatial denoise, okay, which are going to be the white sections of this matte or alpha channel, okay, and add a little bit of softness. And if I basically maybe bring this down a bit, okay. And there, over there, what I do is I kind of work in the transition area between the black point and the white point of this alpha channel. And over here, in those sections, I'm going to ask Mystica to combine the spatial and the temporal denoise, okay? So over there, now we've removed that tearing that we've seen there before. I'm gonna go back to the temporal one so you can see the smearing there that's happening on the highlight of the glasses. But with combined, what we're going to do is those sections that were white in the alpha channel of the analysis of the denoise tool are going to be comped back in just by using a spatial denoise. And the spatial denoise has a parameter here. By default is on 0.050. I sometimes bring it down to 30, and actually it really depends on really the level of noise that you have in the picture and how much you want to smooth it out. And obviously you'll have to adjust the spatial denoise to the scope, to the number of frames that you're analyzing in the picture. And this is mostly how motion estimation temporal tools work. And obviously we need to take care of those artifacts so they don't appear in our final image. And then just finally what I'm going to do is maybe show a wipe of the noise, the denoised and the noise shot, if that's okay.
Yeah. Paco, can I ask you, what type of system are you on? Are you on a really beefy, heavy iron type system, or can you run it on lesser?
No, I'm running on a Windows system with AMD Ryzen Threadripper processor and RTX 20 Ti GPU. So, well, it is, we could say it's a gaming system. This is the system that I have at home, and on my office, I do have a full-blown Mystica system in Linux.
Okay, I suppose it's like anything. When you're doing this sort of complexity, you do need a slight, it will push your system a little bit more.
Yeah, it will. And actually we will try maybe try to play a section
that'd be
here right now. So let me show you here. So I don't know if you could see over there the noise.
Yeah.
difference, maybe if we go to the sky section over here, you can see the differences of how the skin now looks much smoother.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've done a quite aggressive denoise here. We've chosen a scope of 5, and maybe for this shot, we actually could have gone slightly lesser on 3 frames. I think that would be actually good enough. We didn't need to go so aggressive, but for the purpose of showing this over Zoom, 5 is aggressive enough to, so you can see the differences between one side and the other. Okay, and just to maybe see if it plays, well, let me try to play it here. Actually, it's running on the GPU and it's running on real time. So it's actually quite good. But as obviously the caveat there is that you really need to fine tune it yourself, and you need to really manipulate the parameters to get it exactly what you want.
So just to clarify, it hasn't cached or anything, it's just running real time. So you make a change,
no,
run again.
No.
With the other caveat that they may not be really seeing the end result, because after Zoom has handled it and crushed it, we don't, you know, right? And I only say this because that's the hardest part about talking about this, is our local person can really see what they're doing well. We're going to post, and I think Warren or Kevin will mention how we're going to put up our results so you can go and examine and look at it yourself towards the end of this talk.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Paco.
No, it's fine. Actually, obviously, the more frames you analyze, obviously, the harder it's going to be to play back. So obviously, right now at the very end, I did just go back to 3 frames. If I put it to 9 frames, maybe we could see if it suffers a bit more. Let's double check. No, it's going fine, but well, it also really depends, obviously, on the amount of time that it's analyzing and stuff like that. But it's not always the case, I can tell you. Once you're working with maybe raw media or whatever, well, you can see here, actually now, it is slowing down a bit. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so that's the stuff that's built into Mystica.
Yeah.
You're going to just give us a quick demo of, or a quick intro to DVO before we throw it over to Blake?
Yeah, so now in Mystica, you do have available all the Filmworkz, well, not all, but you have the new Filmworkz plugins that are available for Mystica. The DVO brick wall, the chroma, clarity, pixel, regrain RGB, and DVO sharpen. I do have here in just beside in my timeline, actually the same shot already with the DVO clarity applied over my shot. And you can see it has a lot smaller amount of parameters. And actually, you don't need that much time to fine tune it. You just can define the amount and the aggressiveness of how much noise it's going to reduce, and then how much of the image is going to preserve. These plugins obviously are really powerful, and they're running on the CPU. So we could see that the differences here, it's going at 6 frames per second when I play it. So yeah, it's obviously the difference between the built-in Mystica tool and the DVO tools. But for ease, actually I really like it, because you just get the shot, apply the DVO clarity, maybe just modify a few things per shot, and you're good to go and start doing your work. Or, well,
you're doing this in Resolve.
Yes, and so I'm doing this in Resolve. Okay, this is running on my Mac Pro, and this has a dual 6-core CPU, 64 gigs of RAM. And so as you can see, we've got the same clip here. Now what's happened is that Filmworkz is super easy to install. And when it comes in, it shows up as OpenFX plugins. And so as you can see, it gives me here 6 different plugins that I can utilize. So what we've got is we've got the brick wall filter, the DVO chroma, clarity, pixel, regrain, RGB, and also sharpen. So for this particular shot, what I'm doing is just applying a bit of clarity and a bit of sharpening to the picture. So if we want to come over here and let's just, excuse me, not that, okay. come back to this shot here, and let's take that off. And then let's come over here. And now, as you can see, there's the shot without any processing at all. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is then come out, back out of there. And then let's add a little bit of clarity into it. And then look at the same shot here now. And that's with clarity on it. Okay, so it's running a little bit slower because it's actually, like Paco was saying, it's running off the CPU. And then what I want to do next is apply a bit of sharpening to the picture. So what we can do then is if we come out of full screen, come down to here, and we've got the sharpening. So as you can see here, I've applied this into here. Now, what is really neat about this is that you can also apply it in separate channels as well. And there's a nice little shortcut in Resolve. If you come to here and you say, I want to use the splitter and combiner, if you do Alt-Y, and then Alt-Y will separate this now into RG and B channels. And then you can apply that into the channels individually. Say if you just want to do it in the blue channel or something like that, the channel that comes up as the noisiest. So if you come over here, as you can see here, I can see where the problem happens to occur in the picture. And so I can then come out of that. And then if I want to, and just take it out like so and toggle through there. Okay, so then if we want to look at the regrain function, so what I've done here, what's very great for regrain is to build up power grades. So what I've done here is I just did a quick little series of examples here of low, medium, and high. So if we come over here to the guy in the barn here, and as you can see here, if we come to this one, and then we apply that grade, and then we come over here and look at it like so, and play that, that's without any regrain taking place at all. So now if I come over here now and just say, let's come to here and say, apply the grain to that. And then let's come over, just make it a little bit bigger now. And now, as you can see, we've got a bit more grain that's been added to the picture. Now, if I come out of that, I can then, let's just make it really high so we can really see what's going on here and take that like so. And then if I come up to here, now, of course, that's a little bit too much. But it gives us an idea of actually what we can do with this. So let's say if I wanted to go back down, let's say bring it down to medium, for example, and then come over to here, and then we can come over and just see it like this. Of course, with the rain, maybe it's not so good, but you can do this. What I usually do is I will make different grain examples for, let's say, like 16 millimeter 35 or 500 ASA, 1000 ASA, and things like that, for example.
That reminds me of the 90s, Blake.
Yes, exactly.
Struggling with a lesser telecine with a tweaker trying to fix stuff.
Well, exactly. I mean, I had some stuff that was shot by NASA, and they shot at 1000 ASA, and the grain was like the size of ping pong balls. And so what I had to do was use a combination of spatial and median noise reduction to try to smooth it out and try to get it without having it look like something out of The Simpsons, you know? And so I made it look pretty decent after in the end.
Now, these plugins, you can buy them by the month or by the year. How does that work?
Yeah, it's actually, it's a, you can do it, I believe it's by the month and the year. Yeah. And so you can do it a long-term type things.
That's also by the tool. You can hire just one tool if you want to. There's a package for the whole lot, or you can have them one tool at a time. Yeah.
And I think there's going to be several packages, aren't there, Kevin? Is going to be available eventually?
Well, we'll see when I show Nucoda that for Nucoda, there are lots of packages. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think they're going to introduce more in time.
And Kevin's probably best to explain where the history of the Filmworks has come, because a lot of people have heard of DVO as being a really cool tool, but probably not aware of exactly where it's come from and how it's got to where it is now. So we'll let Kevin do that one, probably is best to explain.
But what I find interesting is because if you look here in the come over here to this one and go to the library. And if you select a tool and then go to the settings, as you can see, there's a fair amount of stuff to set up for each one. So what I always do is I will tend to set these up and then put them into power grade. So this way I can just plug them into a shot that I need without having to sit there with the client and sit there and, you know, move the sliders around. Stuff
That
like that.
is a good tip.
Yeah, it actually mirrors a lot of what Diego was talking about, which
Precisely,
is,
yeah.
you know, that we're all under pressed time constraints and we have our own special sort of pre-built recipes and power grades as starting points. So I'm sure that you don't actually do a splitter combiner as far as it goes. You already probably have it built with noise reduction deactivated,
Precisely.
activating as need. Yeah,
exactly.
That's right.
So basically, I'll just have the splitter combiner in a power grade, right mouse click on it and say append to the end, and it sticks it on the end. I'm ready to go. Yeah.
Sure. Any other thoughts? Because Kevin's going to round this out on the other side. You know, how long have you been using it? How long have you been using these DVO plugins? Has it been a day, a week, a month?
Oh, it's been a couple of months I've been using it already.
A couple months?
Yeah.
All right. So has it become a go-to for you?
Yeah, I like it very much. What I like about it is that you can do some real extreme corrections. Let's say if I'm using clarity, and I don't see any massive degradation in the picture that I would, let's say, if I'm using spatial noise reduction or something like that, you know. And so it's I'm very pleased with the results.
Outstanding. Outstanding. I'd like to take it over to Diego to talk about Resolve's built-in noise reduction. And of course, it's only built into Studio itself.
I mean, one of the things that I can say is that if you are with the free one, with the free version, one of the strongest point to get the Studio is the noise reduction. 7 years ago, that was my reason. And I'm sure right now for many people, that's the strongest reason. I mean, it's still really cheap. So the noise reduction in Resolve, you can find it here. And as Paco says, you have the temporal and the spatial noise reduction. And you can start using, I always say that I have like some rules before starting to make a noise reduction. One is I go to the playback and I enable my render cache. Because as you guys know, the noise reduction requires a lot of GPU. So, I mean, it's always better to have in user or in the smart to have some real time. Then I like to enable my scopes, because in my scopes, I see the amount of noise that I'm removing. And also after finishing the noise reduction, I love to play the shot. I love to play the shot because I mean, in play is where you see the artifacts. You have to think that many times when you are reducing noise, you are going to produce artifacts. So play in full screen and in real time. That's my tip. In my case, my machine is not so, I mean, I will show it to you here. Are you seeing my machine is from 2014, 32 gigabytes, 4 gigabytes of GPU. So it's not a monster. I mean, it's good, but it's not a monster. It's old, 6 years old. But I mean, it's working. So here I have the temporal and the spatial. One of the questions that most people ask is, which one I use first, the spatial or the temporal? So the temporal, as Paco says, isolate noise from movement. The spatial isolate, in some way, touch all the image, but take care more of the high detail of the part of the image. So in most of the cases, for example, in this shot, if I play it, probably you're not going to see there in real time, but if I play it, I see a lot of noise, especially in the background. That is a part with no movement. So what I like to start, or it's always better to start with the temporal. And here you set the number of frames where you want to analyze. If you have fast movements, probably 5 is going to be a good number. But remember, noise reduction always creates artifacts, and you have to take care. You have to take care, and then you have to check it. In this case, we don't have a lot of movement, so I will select 3. Then you have here like 3 options, or 2 options for the motion estimation type. This is the quality of the analysis. You can put faster or you can put better. You have to always have in mind that if you put better, the render time is going to be longer. So be careful of that. And then you have motion range 3 options: small, medium, and large. This is the quantity of the motion that your image has. If your image has a lot of movement, large is going to be good. If it doesn't have so much, small. But in this case, as you see, I have a little bit, so I will select medium. Then you have the temporal threshold, because here I didn't make anything. I just select some things. Now I have to analyze it. So I have the chroma and the luma. I have it in gang, but I can separate. Fortunately, for this shot, we don't have color noise. That is one of the most difficult ones. I mean, here we have noise, but this noise is not so, I mean, it's not so difficult. I mean, we are going to see some problems, but it's not so difficult. So what I love to do in some cases is that I love to increase in some number, and then I like to press the highlight button and select the difference. Here you can see a mapped image of the analysis, and one of the things to note here is the edges. In most of the cases with noise reduction, you are going to destroy the edges. You're going to destroy the detail of the edges. So if you find a lot of, or if you see in this map, the edges really strong, it's because you are losing them, all right? So in this case, you can find like an average, and also depending on the picture, you can select, hey, probably I don't need so much of chroma. I will decrease the chroma, or I will increase the luma. And here you can find, for example, in this case, I will zoom. You can find, I will put probably here. Let me show it to you in this part. I will enable, disable. So here I'm doing, in some way, a good work, but take a look at the edges. So I'm losing them. I'm losing them. So I need to start playing. One of the cool things also here in this part of the noise reduction is this motion. This motion is the one that is going to show you how many pixels you are going to affect by the noise reduction. So for example, let me explain it to you here. By default it's 50, but if you see some artifacts, some smear or some different artifacts, and you want to decrease a little bit, you can decrease it here. Or if you want to apply it more, you can move it here. Finally, you have a good option that is blend, that is blending the result of the noise reduction with your original image. So in this case, probably is good. And finally, we have the spatial one. The spatial one is we have just 2 options that in some way is cool. I always think that when we have a lot of options, we move many things, but I don't know, probably we don't have the time for moving all of that things. So we just want in some cases, some fastest tools. So here we have faster, better, and enhanced. That's the quality of the analysis. Enhanced is really, really good. And spatial noise reduction is going to affect all the image. You have to know that. Enhanced is really good, but in enhanced, the computer in most of the cases is going to require more power. If I hit play right now, I will just move this. Look, now it's kind of hard. And look, 1 frame per second, 2 frames per second. So enhanced requires a lot of computer resources, but it's better. It's preserving more the edges. Usually I apply it after the temporal, the spatial, but in some of the cases you don't need. I always think you have to check, you have to watch it in real time and start moving the parameters. And if you're asking, hey, do you start with the spatial? I usually start always with temporal and then go to spatial to have the best, or to find the best results.
I would say that, like Diego said, you've got to see it in real time. So if that means caching it, that means rendering it, zooming it up, checking out different parts of the image. Now that's really important. Especially for you, but also if you've got a director that wants to see what you're doing, you've basically got to see it in real time. You got to just check for some of these funny artifacts that you will get. Keep your settings lower. Less is probably better in a lot of cases.
I brought to the table 2 different items. One was I just gotten done working with a bunch of editors who weren't going to go to heavy color correction tools. I'm going to talk about Magic Bullet Denoiser 3. It runs $199. Their suite that includes the Colorista plugin is $899. And Red Giant just this year did like just here's everything for about $5.99 a year. So I thought that was a pretty neat idea. If you're a Premiere user, if you're a After Effects user, and you're looking for something that's not their built-in tools, Red Giant makes some just excellent choices here. And here I am in Premiere. I just want to show one feature about Colorista 4. And this will be hard to see across Zoom, especially because I'm running this at 4K. But I think it's really amazing that they've built into their color corrector a skin overlay just to do skin protection. And that's fairly clever and unusual for the NLE side of color correction tools. I didn't have to do any color work here, because it was already corrected when it was given to us. And when I use Denoiser, and I'm going to turn it on, reset it, I'm just going to zoom in on screen a little bit here, just so we can see the noise. And so everybody's aware I'm about 400% zoomed in Premiere. I'm just going to turn it on. This is its default. It's fair, didn't do a bad job. I'm just going to crank up the reduce noise and release. And that's not terrible. It runs in After Effects and Premiere, as well as Final Cut 10 in Motion. So this becomes a very, very quick way to do sophisticated denoising in any of these given tools. And the big sort of tips I have with it is it's very, very fast. It's great for editors. And there's a switch. I think it's 25%, it might be 35%. There's a different algorithm used. And when you hit that algorithm, you get significantly better playback. I'm getting on this system. This is a MacBook Pro i9. It's got the Vega 20 chip. It's also got an eGPU. I was getting at half resolution, 30 frames a second, or 24 frames. I was getting about half speed, a little more than half speed at full resolution. It works really well in a lot of the news and same-day editorial groups I work with. Find it to be just this great solution to crank through stuff and make it just not as loud in its noise.
So that's basically any plugin where Magic Bullet works, Denoiser will work as well, yeah?
Right. You get it as part of the Magic Bullet suite, and it's there, so it's a zero cost for a lot of people.
Yeah.
This brings me to the one I've been using for a bunch of years, Neat Video. And it's $159. And Diego, whenever I talk to a lot of editors, especially the ones up and coming into this frontier, they go, should I be buying my full Resolve or should I get Neat? And I say, of course, you should do both. And their OFX suite, like, it's crazy how many, this works on everything that OFX works on. It works on the whole Adobe suite. It works on the Apple tools. It's just a crazy amount of tools it works on. I want to give you a couple demos of it. Yeah, its compatibility is just assume it works. That's an easier one. So I want to just do a quick demo with this footage. Let me close this up. And let's just reset it. I don't need this bad boy right there. So we'll just reset this node. And all I've done is put it on there. I'm already zoomed in. Let's make this a little bit larger here. And I've zoomed in on the shot just so we all can see the noise going on. And I'm going to go ahead here and say prepare noise profile. And this is sort of a unique thing that it does. Let's zoom in the app itself. You say sample, where you can choose an area that doesn't have detail, and it builds a unique noise profile for your footage. And that's going to come back in a second. So let me zoom out so you can see what it's choosing. Auto profile. And it said, hey, I looked at this, and then it shows it to us under Luma, Chroma Red, Chroma Blue. And in theory, what you're looking for is how good is the quality of it? I'm already in advanced mode. I'm going to take this back to beginner mode. How good is the quality and how good is the denoising? And there's a little profile check button here. And I can see how it's doing in all the channels. as well as check the overall shot. Now you start here and you can play with the noise level. Often what I do is I back it off until I start seeing noise in the individual channels. There was that premiere message. Thanks. And I'm going to go to adjust and preview. And the reason I'm coming here is because it's got the ability to do some really nice playback, caching about 9 frames. And as it caches these frames, it allows you to make adjustments and see the results of those adjustments. And just like we've been talking about so far, it's got a spatial component, starts off at 2 frames, and a temporal component, and a spatial component. I'm going to stop that there. If you're on a system that doesn't have great playback, you can click this button and see a sort of a live comparison of what's being filtered and not. I'm just going to zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. There we go. And let's move that around so we can see that edge. And so I'm hoping over Zoom, you can see just where that noise is. Oh, come on, Jeff. Release. There we go. You can see that noise going on both inside and outside, as well as the detail. Now, where I feel this really shines as a plugin is when you go ahead here and you go into this sort of advanced mode. When I come back for a moment to the noise profile, you're able to see where it's saying there's noise, whether it's in high, medium, or low frequency information, as well as the individual channels. And there's just deep ability to look into not just YCRCB, but also into individual channels. Let's bring up just the Y channel for this. Go back to normal here a moment, and let's go over to the adjust and preview. The other thing that I love is that it's sort of got a wizard level of being able to check the noise itself. And the areas in blue are the areas that it's removing noise from. The areas that aren't in blue are the areas of detail. And you can dial that noise a little bit more precisely with this noise level check. It does both flicker, repeated frames, and then it turns you into spatial at the very end. And they give you really great diagnostic tools. So for me, what I love about it is that you can examine the channels while you're working. This is one of a couple tips I have for it is, and it's stunning. I walked into a couple places and they just don't know this exists. It's got its own ability to look at your personal system and tell you how to weigh how the tool works, whether it should be GPU, CPU, or multiple GPU based. On my system, it said the GPU is the best way for it to work, and actually using the CPU slows it down as a combination. They also have the ability to generate a test pattern, and it's really great for you to use this on set. Not very few of us have that ability to influence the filmmaker, but if they're shooting a chart, they can shoot this, and this improves individual camera lighting noise profiles to do even a better job. And the advanced mode is where I really have fallen in love with it, because it really helps you visualize where the noise is if you want to hand tweak. The areas to explore, and I want to throw this last one, Warren, while I run out my last minute here.
Yeah, I'm checking.
They do variants. So in a really similar feel to Resolve, I could say, all right, I'm happy with the way this worked. Let me just do that sort of split again inside of it. And I just want to see how sharpening affects it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say variance. And then I come down to sharpening and turn on the sharpening to see how it's affecting, particularly right in her, towards her teeth. And let's make, oh, I should have done a variant first. So I'll do a variant and then turn off this. And then I can right click the variant to compare. So your right click allows you to build multiple variants of the noise profiles you're building and say, do I like this one better or that one? And at least on the per frame, or even while this is working and caching, this works in suite with somebody. Is it going to be real time? It's of course limited to your machine, but it gives you, at least the colorist, a really good feel for how it's doing on its noise reduction. I've been thrilled with this plugin for years, but version 5, which just came out recently, is just a great addition. And I think it belongs to everybody's suite along that regard. Mr. Eagles, I hit it in 10 minutes, my friend.
What's it worth?
$150 for Resolve. Let me go back there. I think it's $250 to work on any OFX-based system.
I'm agree with you.
Sorry?
I have the Resolve and I have the Knit. I mean, it's the perfect combination for me.
It's a great combination because of its dead flexibility and its ability for when I'm struggling a little bit with whatever noise reduction tool I'm in, whether I'm in Premiere, whether I'm in Media Composer, which has no real noise reduction. This is sort of a really nice go-to for me. And there are few situations where I haven't had phenomenal results with it, but in this age of Zoom, I find even more so I'm using it to take out some of the artifacting noise I get.
You got distracted there. My dog managed to key itself into my river behind me.
I thought it was the puppy filter that we're doing next webinar, Warren.
It's breakfast time. The dog was struggling to get in. Doesn't understand about webinars. It's food.
I believe last but not least, Kevin, is you rounding us out?
Sure. Yeah, I have a story to tell. Just to let everybody know that we are going to render these examples out so that you can scrutinize them in a bit more detail. I know it's a little difficult over Zoom because of the compression. So they're worth checking out. And so I'm going to talk about Nucoda. So I'll do my screen share. Let's kick off with that. I mean, to be honest, I've been away from Nucoda for a couple of years. And just in the last few months, I've started getting back into it, and I've really missed it. So one of the questions in the Q&A was, who makes Filmworkz? So Filmworkz is a new brand from Digital Vision World, and Digital Vision World bought Digital Vision. I can't remember when, I think a year or so ago, quite recently anyway. So for those that don't know Digital Vision, back in the days of telecine, we needed noise reduction, of course, in real time for film transfers. And there were 2 or 3 on the market, but by far the best and by far the most popular was Digital Vision. So they made a hardware noise reducer that sat alongside and was controlled actually by everybody else's color correctors. And then roll on sort of 20-odd years, and we're into software color correction, and Digital Vision teamed up with Nucoda to put all of their algorithms into the Nucoda software. And in fact, they ended up buying Nucoda, and there are a lot of nice synergies there. But they continue to develop it. And the thing that you notice mostly about the Digital Vision tools is that every single parameter is designed as a result of somebody sending them a problem. So somebody will send in something they couldn't deal with, and then they'll modify the tools to work with. And at the moment, there are 6 available in the Filmworkz plugin for Mystica and Resolve. But actually, if you look down the list inside of Nucoda, there's around, I think there's about 38 tools. A lot of them are for restoration, but a lot of them have kind of creative purposes. So you've got things like Twister, which is a time warp program. You've got DVO Zoom, which is an algorithm for upscaling and so on. In Enhance, we've got the regrain that you've seen, Sharpen, Clarity, Brick Wall, and so on. And then in the restoration tools, you've got dust removal, scratch removal, warps, all sorts of things. And then they've introduced recently some video tools for old style tape videos. And there are also now some digital tools as well for dead pixels and things like that. So that was the first thing, really, just to give it a little bit of background. And what I did is I'm going to zoom in here. I did 2 things. So first of all, I graded this with a slightly different perspective to, say, the way that Jeff was working. and I saw in the chat too, there's a conversation about, well, you need to do it quickly. And I think there's two schools of thought on this. One is that you just need something to get rid of the noise, and so you can use the shot. And then you want something as automatic as possible. And then the other one is where you are really sort of tailoring the shot or the project, and then you want to get into a little bit of detail. So I did what I would normally do, and then I passed it over to Digital Vision, actually to Bjorn Lantz, who's been there forever, and is a great support guy. Also, I think he's product manager now. I'll ask him later. But a real expert on restoration and these tools. And I gave it to him, and he pointed out a couple of tools which I hadn't thought of, which I'm going to show you too, which are really cool. So I'll go in nice and tight. What we're looking at here is the original material again, and then I'll call up. So I put these into tracks so I can just turn them on and I can show you the tools. And so this one is the DVO grain tool. And you can see it has this basic mode. Now, DVO grain was originally developed for film grain, and so shouldn't really work very well on this. The reason I use DVO grain sometimes, and you can see I've got it set at basic and low strength, and in the processing, it's just set on its default actually at 7. I would even probably lower it a little bit. You can see if I toggle this off and on, you can see it's fairly aggressive. Let me just check on my other screen, see if you can see that. Not very much. Maybe I'll put a split screen up. So let's go here. Oh, I can't see my split screen because you guys are covering it up. Okay, all right, can't get to the split screen. But I can toggle the track off and on. It's very aggressive, and all of the things that Paco and Diego talked about and Blake talked about, it's the traditional temporal and spatial tool. And so it can generate artifacts. In fact, I've done several music videos where I went over and turned off motion. You see, you can turn off motion estimation. That's really great if you want to kind of create a nice smearing effect, which pulls itself together when something stops moving. It's kind of a cool effect. I use it in a lot of music videos. Then I did one which was just clarity. And so if we toggle between those two, you'll see that the clarity retains much better edges and is equally effective actually. And as the others have said, clarity is incredibly easy to use because it doesn't give you this choice of spatial and temporal. It figures that out for itself. And so one of the reasons why clarity was developed was to be able to do something very quick without a lot of technical knowledge. And here's the kicker. It has 0 artifacts. If we look at this hair, this very fine hair detail, and I just put this into, let me just tell this to loop and hit play. You'll see all that fine hair detail is kept, even though there's quite a lot of motion on there. All right, so that's a comparison of the clarity and grain. And then in the next one, what I did, and you can see this over here, is I applied all of them. Sorry, not that one. There we go. In the next one, I applied grain and clarity, and then I added sharpen on top. So if we go to the sharpen tool here, one of the nice things in Nucoda is every tool, even the color correction tools, allows you to turn it off and on to see what you just did. And so I should be able to just turn that off and turn it back on again. I have a horrible feeling that my system is bypassed. All right, here we go. Okay, so that's the difference between grain, clarity, and then this one is grain and clarity. So the thing about this is I can use grain perhaps to denoise the blue channel, which is all that ocean in the background. So all of this background area, I can give it a little bit of an extra, let's turn that off. I can give it a little bit of an extra punch with the grain tool. And then I can come in and use clarity on top of that. And then I use sharpen just to pick out these edges right at the end. And so in here, you can see I've sharpened it and just toggle it off and on. And in the sharpen tool, what I really like is you've got low detail and high detail. This is not shadows and highlights. This is high frequency noise, high frequency detail, like the hair, and low detail as well. You have an overall strength, so I normally crank that up to 200, make the adjustment, and then bring it down to an acceptable level. And then the trims are like a key, so they will remove sharpening in the shadows or the highlights. And so I combine those two together as well. So that's all well and good. And then, like I say, Bjorn showed me another little trick, which I think is really cool. And that is that in his grade, he has used, first of all, DVO chroma. And what chroma does is it gets rid of chromatic aberration. So if let me see if I can go back to the, how can I go back to the source? Without having access to the right-hand side of my screen. Okay, here's the original. If I go in close here, you can see there's a little bit of a color glow around these highlights, which is softening the image actually. And so then if I come over here, where he's applied the chroma tool, that's got rid of that chromatic aberration to start with. He then did a key on the blacks. So you can see there's some real dark shadow detail here. And what he's done there is he's used a brick wall filter, which is a hard cutoff, but he's done it inside of a key. So he's got a keyer. This is the keyer. So he's used an ICA, which is a 3D keyer. He's picked up the shadows and then run a brick wall filter to eliminate the noise as a frequency rather than as a noise pattern. And then he's finished off with clarity on top. He's run it very high, so he's running it at 93% and quite aggressive. And this is the thing that I've found with the DVO tools over everything else. With all the other noise reducers I've used, you kind of crank it up until it gets smeary. With the digital vision tools, you just set everything to maximum and then you back it off until you get back a little bit of texture that, that you're happy with. And with that in mind, what I did with this shot, both in my finished footage and Bjorn's shots, is I added regrain afterwards. And again, the regrain tool in DVO is really nice. First of all, unlike Blake, I always run the saturation on my grain tool at very low. I'm normally putting in black and white grain, not color grain. You can see my overall amount on this shot is also quite low. And then I feather the sharpness. So my sharpness in the red channel is usually lower than, say, the green or the blue channel. And that's so that I get a softer skin and then sharper areas in the blues and greens, particularly the greens. So normally green is where we see most of the sharpness. So I'll do that. And I did the same thing over here in my grade without the chroma tool. I put back a little bit of the grain. This is a very popular technique in Europe and in cinema because that extra grain layer, if I can just bypass that for a second, let's go in here and turn it off. So I don't know whether you can see that across Zoom, but by adding back a little bit of grain, we introduce sharpening because the eye sees this grain as the absence of information and it makes it look sharper. The only time that I avoid using grain is if it's going for streaming, because grain is high frequency noise and that will cause problems with compression algorithms. So if you're going to get something that's going to be heavily compressed, if you know you're going to deliver H.264, H.265, I generally don't use grain. But otherwise, I love to add a little bit of grain in there and it just sort of sharpens the whole picture up.
Kevin, can I just ask you a question? Can you just clarify something on the clarify? So the clarify went after you've done everything else. Is that in the processing tree at the end?
Clarity,
of the processing? Clarity, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's when you're doing sort of this bit by bit approach, which allows you to really tailor the image the way that you want. you generally want to put the more aggressive tools up front and then finish it with the kind of sweeter tools. So, but you know, Bjorn didn't bother with the grain at all. I just put it in there as an example that you can compound. You don't have to do everything with one tool. And really, to give you the most control, you're going to use several tools.
Yeah.
And like Blake, I'll often use presets and build them up that way. And I'll just drop it on, see if it makes it better or not. If it doesn't work, I throw it away. If it does make it better, then I'll go in and fine tune it, and then I'll save it. And then the question about, do I do it before or afterwards? Most of it I'm doing up front. Most of it, in this case, I'm doing everything before any color correction, and I'm caching it. Occasionally, I will do the color correction first and then apply the noise reduction, but still up front. And then I'll just let it render overnight and cache it again so that I don't have to sit and wait for it.
Great.
But it's pretty responsive, actually.
Now, the tools you've used, are they in the Filmworks package, or are they just Nucoda Pacific?
So the ones that I used are all in the Filmworks package.
Right.
And the ones that Bjorn used as well. Actually, everything we've used here is all in Filmworks.
Excellent.
So a lot of the extra tools are really more restoration type tools. Things like dust, scratch, fix, steady. And there's some quite specific tools in there as well. But yeah, that's the thing for me. That's the reason why I always like to use DVO, and I'm so excited about getting it into Resolve and Mystica now, is that you can turn it on and the risk of artifacts is way less than I've seen it in other devices.
You know, Kevin, I'm just interested in your opinion, because it sounds like you've had the most, you or Paco has had the most use of the DVO tools. Jeff, one of the people in the chat, he said, I've used Clarity in Mystica and I applied first to my footage and made myself new sources with it baked in, and it was great. But he struggles to use it in a live session with the client. Do you want to touch on that at all? I mean, I think that's kind of a little bit across the board. One of the struggles with noise reduction tools that are sub-real time is you got to be doing some intelligent caching.
Well, yeah, so you need to cache it. The way that I deal with that is the way that I deal with tracking and a whole bunch of, you know, roto. The way that I deal with all of that stuff is for anything other than a commercial, I'll work on, you know, one frame and we'll get an agreed sign off on that one frame. And then I'll say, you know, go shopping or, you know, leave it with me tonight or whatever. And I'll do it outside of the client time. They'll come back and they'll look at it. Of course, you can't really do that with a commercial. So with commercials, what I'll normally try and do is set the noise reduction up before the session starts. If there's time, if I've got the footage, I'll normally set the noise reduction up and cache it before the session starts. I like to have it in there because it does makes keying so much nicer.
That's an absolute, you know, it really, you know, nails out a lot of that noise when you have to run a key. It just makes all the difference in the world in making it key, things key easily across the board. So I think we're done our screen share. Let's raise that as the overall question. And it's a leading question, gentlemen. Noise reduction first, last, in between, go.
Always noise reduction first and sharpen last. That's my rule.
Yeah, I agree totally. Yeah.
I agree as well.
I have a spot where I disagree. I find that with a lot of the, you know, when somebody's snuck in particularly an 8-bit codec.
Oh yeah.
That's where I find myself going, let me see how far I can push it and how noise reduction and some of the debanding tools can help salvage a shot. That's one of the spots where I see it. But it's mostly in the lower end formats, if you will. Does anybody use noise reduction along those lines 2 times in a shot? Sometimes at the beginning and sometimes at the end.
Before and after. And actually, in the days of Telecine, Digital Vision made a hardware noise reducer that was absolutely before, and then you did the color correction, and then after. You had to loop in and out of the noise juicer from the color corrector to do exactly that. So yeah, that is a good policy. Yeah, that is a good policy.
Okay. Also, brings me to my second one. Go ahead.
No. When you target a particular area of your shot, I don't know, a sky, especially when what you said with 8-bit footage from the lower end cameras, you have to suddenly get a nicer sky there, and then you get, well, the banding sometimes, and also some of the noise when you try to darken those blues. And yeah, you kind of, the answers, they're doing it afterwards as well, or even localized only to that part. So yeah.
You know, I'd like to think we're all always high end, but I was just in a prior event this past week, I got the joy of interviewing Rob Legato, and he told part of a story of Scorsese needed a shot of like the seatbelt light on a plane, and Legato took out his phone, shot it, and they used it in the final print from his phone. So, you know, I'd like to tell you it's only the lower end productions that end up with these codecs, but
well, the archive footage, sure. With the amount of content we're doing right now, the amount of archive footage that's being used from different platforms, not all of them have the same quality to the shot footage of your show. So you actually need to make it look similar, and that is actually another part where you could actually use a denoise to make it look similar, and then regrain, just as Kevin showed.
I think what you got to remember is, sorry, Jeff, go on. I was going to remember that
Ricardo just asked that. Chew Eagles, go, boss, go.
Mate. You're pushing. The more you're pushing the image, you're pushing each pixel away from where it wants to be. Like it's exposed somewhere, you're pushing it out of its comfort zone. You're going to get these artifacts wherever it's the banding. So you've got to be a bit flexible about where you're putting these tools. But it's like anything, you've got to be comfortable with them. And there is quite a lot of settings and sliders. And the more you use them and know what you're doing, and the more you're going to feel comfortable with a client, you're going to be a bit faster. So that's where you just got to practice, render, bring it back, look at it, do it again, render it. You will get quicker, but it's not something you just do and pick up. But I think what's really cool, I think we could do another webinar on adding grain, because I've ramped up the color not onto a podcast, because obviously I'm going nowhere, with Walter Volpato, Toby Tompkins, and we talk a bit about adding grain and when do you add it and why do you add it, and that would be a really good webinar, I think. Because more and more it's coming into the conversations, how much are we trying to make it look like film? When are we adding it? Should we add it? So that might be something down the track. I digress.
Yeah,
let's get back on track.
It's always about making it look like film. There is, like I say, it's a creative thing. It's always been part of an image. And we all know if you overdo the noise reduction and you get sort of plasticky images, that's not nice to look at. We like a little bit of texture.
We do, but we always say that because we're slightly older guys. We're used to film, we're used to watching it, aren't we? But these younger gamer types, they're looking at it going, what's all that shit crawling over the screen?
They're also young people like Diego. It's not 60 frames. They're also upset because it's not 60 frames a second.
Have we got any other questions, Jeff?
My next big question is, what frame rate is your breaking point? What frame rate is it half speed? Is it below that? What's your breaking point for where you go, yeah, I'm either going to have to render or cache it, or I need better hardware?
I, by default, cache it or render it, and I think it's just what Warren said. You really need to analyze the picture. You can't really just give for granted the first result, except for clarity, just what Kevin said. But on the other side, if it's a very heavy shot, you really need to analyze the shot and see where the artifacts come up. But I don't know. I always end up caching or rendering and checking it on a big screen. Also checking it on different devices as well. Yeah, always render in the end.
In the end, of course. But I'm talking about while you're working. What point do you go, you know, I'm going to stop and cache, or I want better hardware? I'm curious.
I mean, if it's really slow, what I'll do is I'll turn off all of the processing, guess the settings, and then render, you know, like a second or something. But like I say, I generally do that without clients in the room. I think if it doesn't play at better than half speed, I don't want to do it in front of clients.
I would agree. Half speed feels about right.
Yeah.
And I can still see how the noise reduction is doing its job, and if the chatter is too much or too little, or it's too plasticky, because one frame might look great, but you know, in a succession of frames, I might not feel the same. If anybody else doesn't want to throw in any other thoughts on noise reduction, we should give something away, don't you think?
Oh, nice.
Yes, we should.
Good idea.
We should.
Well, what we're giving away is I believe it's a year of Filmworkz. Is that correct? Is it subscription based?
Yes, it's a 1-year license for Filmworkz.
Well, the question is, what does DVO stand for?
Yes. Oh.
In your experience, is there a better plugin, or is it about the way the tool, the way you work with the tool? We talked about advice, Denoiser we talked about. For Blake, in starting to learn about color, I was intrigued with the splitter combiner method to reduce noise. Can you explain a little bit more? I think we'll split that off into a couple people here. Mm-hmm. So somebody want to take, is it the tool, is it the process, or is it a little bit of both, gentlemen?
It's definitely both. Some tools, if they are prone to delivering artifacts, require a lot of attention. Whereas if you've got a tool, you know, like, and I'll use Clarity as an example because that was really why it was developed, where you can pretty much trust it, then you can get great results, probably better results with much less work. So it's a bit of both. With all of these, you have to know how to use them. And things like splitting it up into channels, or using, you know, the red channel more than or the blue channel more than the red channel, that sort of thing. That's all sort of creative. So it's a bit of both.
Blake, since it was you who I don't want to say cheated, who showed the phenomenal technique of splitting things up using the splitter combiner, do you want to track that for just a moment?
Yeah, sure. Actually, what I do is, by doing that, this is a quick shortcut key that's built into Resolve to actually bring the splitter and combiner node in. So basically what it is, it takes a node and then splits it off into the RGB channels. And then what happens is, when you get finished with it, you have to put it back together. So then you need the combiner to put it back into a single node that you can work with. And so what I do then is, generally the blue channel is going to be the noisiest in most situations. So I'll then apply the noise reduction just into the blue channel that was been split off. And then I get a very good result that way. But you know, you can use the splitter and combiner for a lot of different purposes. So sometimes even when we're doing anaglyphic 3D and stuff like that, we use splitter and combiner for that as well.
Excellent answer.
Sorry, Jeff, just one thing to add to that.
Sure.
So Blake was showing it on Clarity because Clarity doesn't split the channels out for you, but a lot of the tools actually do give you separate red, green, blue.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So you wouldn't need to do it for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You know, one of the things about Neat is I can split it out as YCRCB or red, green, blue, as well as look at individual low, medium, and high noise frequency, which is one of the things I like about it. Leonard asks, what kind of debanding tools do you use? I'm really a fan of the brand new one in the last rev of Resolve. I've started using it left and right. It's just solved a lot of little blurry adjustments.
Yeah, it's nice.
I gotta say, I'm old school. I normally.
Oh, let's hear old school.
Yes.
I normally key and blur. That's normally my go-to. I find it's a little bit more precise than even the. I mean, I do like the D-band plugin, but if I can get a key off it and then do an offset adjustment and a little bit of a blur, that normally gets rid of it quite nicely.
We'll do our last question, then we'll do our giveaway and hear a little bit about the ICA and how we can educate you. How does the QC for, say, HBO measure if it's too noisy, and how do you evaluate that?
Well, that's a tricky one. Normally, I would suggest if you have, you may have to write, like where you write a report about the show, if there's shots that are a little bit noisy, and maybe if it's a doco or something that's been shot under those sort of difficult conditions, then maybe you've got that in your report. Some shots are more noisy, shot like that. That's what I would say. A lot of them have auto things that are detecting for that will come up in your report. But the problem you've got with it is a bit of a subjective thing, that it might be that a director doesn't mind that being in the show. Might not be the problem. So it can be a little bit of a gray area. And the other thing to check, if you've got one shot that's obviously standing out and being a bit noisier, then you really need to run that scene and just say, is it standing out too noisy than the other shots surrounding it? And just keep running it through. And that way you could probably see yourself before it even gets to the QC.
Yeah.
Kevin, can you see the answer there?
Well, the answer is digital vision optics. So I think the first one was Jeff Souza. Yeah, I think we have to decline opticals. I don't think that's accurate enough. Digital vision optics is what it is.
Jeff Souza, well done.
You are the winner, Jeff. It's good to see another Jeff win.
I want to say thank you for Filmworkz for getting involved in this. They're about to launch this with their website and
really interesting.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, no, really fun.
Everyone will have left by now.
Well, they're all going now. So you, but they might be looking on Facebook.
Yeah. No, for me, I just want to say I haven't been doing much of. Everyone knows I've had a broken leg, so I'm getting back into it. I'm going to run some classes in Brazil along with Diego. We're doing that end of November. They'll be in Portuguese. We've both been ramping up our Portuguese, so that's going to be fun. And then I'm going to do something at Able Cine the week after. So that's US time zone. And the Color Tour podcast, not on tour, will be back very soon. So it's been great chatting to these people. I'm looking forward to getting that back out there. Anyone else got any news?
I'm just going to say I'm about to publish the rest of my classes for this year. So there'll be a complete set of classes probably in about a month's time, including the HDR class.
Yeah, Warren and I we're both speaking at a conference next month, Post-Production World Fall. I think it's like October 20 something. I think it's found through NAB and Post-Production World online. You're doing a bunch of, how many classes are you doing?
Two. But I'll be in the after party. The after party is good fun. I'll be around for that.
Yeah.
Standing. There actually is quite a bit of after parties at the event.
Paco?
Yeah, we'll be, I'm preparing some Mystica classes for the ICA, and we might start with a few free webinars for you to watch and get used to the Mystica tools.
Cool, man.
So we will announce that shortly.
It's good to have you on board. It's good to have you on board. Welcome into the
Thank you.
Into the club.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun today, actually.
Yeah. Nice. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Pay attention. We'll be talking what we're doing next month. There's the upcoming Colorist virtual mixer. There are the virtual classes, the webinars, teaching in public. Thanks for
Jeff. Did you mention the Christmas 24-hour mixer?
Shh. Don't commit us to it, but yes.
It's a Christmas gift.
But we should do a 24-hour party across Christmas, happy hour in your time zone. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon or evening or morning, and stay safe, everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Jeff.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Gracias.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh.
Thanks, everyone. Okay.